There are days when something someone said pierces you like an arrow and lingers in the heart all day long. Outwardly, we may smile and move through the day as if nothing is wrong, but when night comes and we are finally alone, the tension we held down all day and an unexplainable anxiety begin to rise like waves. How am I going to get through tomorrow? What if this never gets resolved? Thoughts like these begin to multiply. And before long, our imagination grows larger than reality itself and starts to crush us. In truth, we often believe that if our circumstances improve, peace will naturally follow. So we keep waiting for our problems to be solved. But there are nights when, no matter how quiet it is outside, your heart refuses to settle. The tasks ahead and the weight of tomorrow still hangs over you. Psalm 27 begins right in the middle of that painfully realistic kind of anxiety. This passage does not offer a magical formula that makes every fear disappear in an instant. Instead, it quietly reminds us what we are to look at in the very place where we are shaking and where the gaze of our heart must turn. When the heart is shaken, we first wait for the situation to change. It feels as though if the problem in front of us would only grow quiet, our heart would soon follow. But there are nights when even after the outside becomes still, the inside does not. There is still work left undone. People's words linger in the heart far longer than they should. And when we think about tomorrow, a tension rises that we cannot fully explain. We may spend the day as usual on the outside, while inwardly remaining alert to something all the time. There are moments when being alone feels even more unsettling, and when the brief silence before sleep only makes the heart more restless. Psalm 27 begins very close to that kind of heart. It does not sound like the song of someone who has never known fear. It sounds more like the confession of someone who knows fear, knows the threat of enemies, and knows what it is to live through a long season of waiting, yet still looks to God and holds on. That is why this psalm feels less like the declaration of a strong person and more like the prayer of a soul trying not to lose its direction while trembling. It quietly shows us that faith is not an emotion that removes all anxiety at once, but the act of remembering where the heart must turn, even in the middle of anxiety. As we follow this passage, we begin to see that even if anxiety does not disappear right away, the direction of the heart can still change. Even in the middle of fear, we can call God our light. Even while the answer has not yet come, we can remain before Him and seek His face. Psalm 27 quietly shows how looking to God before looking at the problem can carry a person through the night. Calling God our light can sound like something we say only when the heart is already at peace. When life feels settled, the future seems somewhat secure, and relationships are not causing pain. Faith can appear easy to speak, but Psalm 27 begins in a very different place. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? These words do not come after fear has completely disappeared. They are spoken in the presence of things that could still cause fear. There is opposition. There is threat. There are circumstances that can make the heart shrink back. And yet, before naming any of those things, the psalmist first names who God is. So this confession is not naive optimism. It is the choice of faith that places God before the reality of fear. When the heart is shaken, it naturally magnifies the darkness. A small problem can begin to look much larger when we keep staring at it. A thing that has not even happened yet can start to weigh on the heart, as though it were already real. We begin calculating tomorrow's possible failures before facing today's responsibilities. We remember what we may lose more vividly than the grace we have already received. So anxiety does not grow only from circumstances. It also grows through interpretation, repetition, and imagination within the heart. A person may keep speaking calmly on the outside, while inwardly remaining tense and guarded. And when night comes, thoughts that were pushed aside during the day often return with greater force. In moments of silence, the heart can become even more restless. This is why the opening confession of Psalm 27 stops us. Before making the list of fears longer, It tells us to call God our light. Light does not mean darkness never existed. Light means that even in darkness, we are not left without direction. Salvation does not always mean every problem disappears at once. It means God holds us when everything feels as if it may collapse. The strength of life is not a power that shames weakness. It is the strength that raises a weary heart when it wants to fall. When these words stand together, we begin to see who God is to a fearful soul. He is not distant, managing life from far away. He enters the inward place of a trembling person, shines there, upholds that heart, and gives strength to keep living. So faith does not begin when our emotions improve. It begins when we call on God again. This confession becomes even deeper because the psalmist does not speak of God in a vague way. He says, "My light, my salvation, and the strength of my life." He clings to God in a deeply personal place. He is not repeating someone else's testimony. He is calling on the God who enters his own darkness. This is where meditation becomes more real. The clearer our fear becomes, the more clearly we must call on the one who keeps us. When our words about anxiety grow longer, the heart sinks deeper. But when our confession of God becomes clearer, the heart begins to recover its direction. When the lips turn toward God first, the thoughts slowly begin to follow. This confession is needed on mornings when the chest feels tight without explanation. It is needed on days when a person smiles before others, yet inwardly feels close to breaking. The longer we try to endure by our own strength, the drier the soul becomes. That is why the first line of this psalm is not a mere statement. It becomes a kind of spiritual breath that steadies the heart again. The moment we call God our light, the heart begins to turn away from staring only at the darkness. If we remain with this word quietly, a gentle change begins within. At first, such a confession may feel unfamiliar because the situation has not changed. The heart is still tense. The unresolved matters remain. The pressure of people and circumstances is still there. And yet, when we speak God's name again, the heart slowly begins to learn another center. Whenever fear comes, we stop enlarging its voice and begin remembering the one who gives light. When the mind tries to keep drifting into darkness, we interrupt that movement and turn toward the God who saves. Then anxiety may not vanish immediately, but it no longer rules the whole heart. Darkness may still remain outside, yet another light begins to enter the center within. Faith does not begin when we become strong enough. It begins when in the very place of trembling, we call God our light, our salvation, and the strength of our life. If faith begins by calling God our light, the next thing we see is why that light becomes so necessary. The background of Psalm 27 is not made of quiet sentiment or abstract devotion. It is a setting filled with pressure, threat, and real instability. The psalmist says that evildoers came against him to consume him. He says that adversaries and enemies rose up against him. He even speaks of an army encamped around him and of war rising against him. These are not merely dramatic, poetic lines. They show that life can be shaken from the outside all the way to the center. For one person, that pressure may come through hostility from others. For another, it may come through the burden of ongoing troubles. For someone else, it may come through endless anxiety or memories of failure. What matters is this Psalm 27 was not born in a peaceful field. It came from a place where the heart was being threatened from every side. Our lives are often set against that kind of background. Even without one great disaster, the heart can grow tired over time. Repeated responsibilities make a person feel heavy. Unresolved problems remain in the mind far longer than expected. A single cold word from someone can unsettle an entire day. The weight of tomorrow can steal today's peace before tomorrow even arrives. A day may look ordinary on the outside, while inwardly, tension continues without rest. A person may feel steady while among others, then suddenly weak when left alone. As the night deepens, feelings held down during the day can rise again. So fear is not caused only by visible danger. Accumulated fatigue, relational wounds, the urge to predict the future, and the effort not to collapse can all press upon the soul. The strength of Psalm 27 is that it does not hide this reality. It does not pretend that a person of faith never feels threatened. It does not deny the pressure of circumstances or the trembling of the heart. And that gives us a strange but deep comfort. It reminds us that being shaken does not mean we have lost faith. The arrival of fear does not prove that God is far away. It may become the very place where we begin seeking Him more truly. The psalmist clings to God without erasing the background that could undo him. So faith does not grow only after the setting becomes safe. It grows when the setting remains uncertain, yet the heart still refuses to let go of God. As we meditate on this background, we begin to see our own hearts more honestly. We begin to notice what has been making us heavy. We begin to recognize the thoughts that keep weakening us. We begin to name the tensions hidden from people, but still open before God. And that uncovering is not condemnation. It becomes the beginning of restoration. The moment we stop spending all our strength trying to appear fine, something opens within. God comes nearer to honest fear than to manufactured calm. That is part of what Psalm 27 quietly shows us. Faith is not proof that no wound exists. It is the path that still turns toward God in the presence of wounds and threats. So this word does not hurry us by saying, "Become strong first." Instead, it gently invites us to bring the whole background of our heart before God. To human eyes, the threat appears first, and anxiety grows larger. But before God, even that dark background can become a place of deeper meditation. The clearer the things are that frighten us, the clearer it also becomes where we must stand. The background of Psalm 27 is dark, but even that darkness is changed into a place where God is sought more clearly. As we stay with this confession, that faith does not grow in a safe background, but deepens while still looking to God under threat, a question naturally remains in the heart. When danger is still near, anxiety does not quickly leave, and the season of waiting grows long. What must the heart hold most tightly? In Psalm 27, the psalmist goes deeper into that very place. After speaking of many enemies and fearful circumstances, he says that he has asked for one thing: to dwell in the house of the Lord, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. This does not mean the situation is no longer difficult. Rather, it means that because so many things pull at the heart, one thing must be held more clearly than all the rest. The more anxious a person becomes, the more things the heart wants to hold on to. It feels as though having one more plan, one more calculation, one more prepared response will keep the soul from shaking. So the mind keeps expanding its thoughts, stacking up worries, and searching for some point of control. But the more things the heart tries to hold, the more restless the soul becomes. What is urgent and what is important become tangled together. And instead of seeking what is truly needed, we begin looking only for whatever can calm us quickly. Psalm 27 gently turns that direction. It shows that the way to guard the heart is not to hold many things, but to ask clearly for one thing. The one thing the psalmist speaks of is not merely a religious habit. He does not first ask for a technique to solve his problems. He asks for nearness to God, to remain in God's house and behold his beauty. This is the desire at the center of his heart. This leads us into a very deep place of meditation. In times of crisis, people naturally look first at the problem, but the psalmist chooses to look first at God. To behold the beauty of the Lord does not mean turning away from reality. It means looking again at who God is, so that reality does not swallow the whole heart. When we behold his goodness, his unchanging nature, his holiness, and his faithful care, the trembling heart slowly begins to learn a new order. This reaches our daily lives in a very real way. On days when there is too much to do and the mind feels crowded, the heart breaks apart more easily. It may seem as though we are focusing on one task, yet inwardly, many worries are moving at once. We become conscious of people's responses, fear tomorrow's outcome in advance, and imagine again and again what might go wrong. Without noticing it, the soul begins to remain closer to the situation than to God. What is needed then is not faster calculation, but restored vision. We need to recover the place of staying near to God, even if only for a short while. We need quiet time before his word. We need moments when, Instead of rushing to find answers, we first meditate on his character. We need the habit of returning to him whenever the heart begins to scatter. That is not time that removes us from reality. It is time that keeps us from collapsing within it. In the end, this confession asks about the true priority of the heart. Is God himself really what I desire most? Or do I only want the quick stability that I hope he will give me? Of course we long for resolution. Of course we long for peace. There is nothing wrong with that. But at a deeper level, peace finds its proper place only when the heart begins to seek God himself again. If we hold more tightly to the result than to God, even a small shaking can undo us. But if we seek God before the result, the heart does not lose its center, even while waiting. That is the way the psalmist shows us. He shows how the heart of one who asks for one thing in the midst of many fears begins to gather itself again. This kind of change can begin within us, too. At first, the situation may feel so overwhelming that looking to God seems vague and distant. But as we slowly turn our gaze and meditate on his beauty, the heart no longer flows only toward fear. Even when anxiety comes, we are not pulled away at once. We begin to remember where we must return first. A heart that asks for one thing makes life simpler, and a simpler heart breathes more deeply before God. In the end, the strength that keeps the soul does not come from holding many answers in our hands. It comes from seeking God himself first, even while we are still trembling. The psalmist says that in the day of trouble, the Lord will hide him in his shelter, keep him secretly in the hidden place of his tabernacle, and set him high upon a rock. This is not merely a request to escape difficult events. It means that for the one who dwells in God, there is a preserving grace that keeps the inner life from collapsing, even when outward danger still remains. The trouble may still be near, yet the soul is already being placed in another position. The day of distress has not vanished, but it no longer sits on the throne of the heart. People usually think of safety only as the clearing away of difficult circumstances. If things go well, if relationships are healed, if the future feels secure, if both body and mind become stable, then we think peace has finally come. That kind of peace is precious. But the protection Psalm 27 describes is deeper. God does not only arrange the outward conditions of life, he takes the trembling person and brings that soul into his hidden place. There, in a place unseen, the heart begins to learn a kind of safety that the world cannot give. Voices from others may still be heard. Responsibilities may still remain. An uncertain tomorrow may still be there. And yet the soul no longer feels as though it has been abandoned in the middle of the street. A hidden heart begins to live by another order. This reaches into ordinary life more than we may realize. There are days when the heart feels far too exposed. A person is shaken by the opinions of others. Their mood rises and falls with small reactions, and one unexpected event feels large enough to undo the whole day. Sometimes the reason the center does not hold is that the soul has lost its secret resting place. While trying to appear strong outwardly, the inward life grows more tired, and the feeling of having nowhere to lean makes the heart even drier. That is why Psalm 27 quietly reminds us how great the grace is of being hidden in God. He does not always remove us from the middle of life, but he gives us a place of shelter within it. The images of the shelter, the tabernacle, and the rock all point in one direction. God does not stop at offering vague comfort to the trembling soul. He gives it a place to stand again. The shelter is a place of protection. The hidden part of the tabernacle is a place of nearness. The rock is a place of firmness and stability. When these images are held together, we begin to see that being in God is not only emotional comfort. It is a change in where the soul stands. Before, threat surrounded us. Now, God surrounds us. Before, fear shook the ground beneath our feet. Now, God sets us upon a rock. This is one of the deep changes that takes place through his word. In the life of faith, what matters is not creating a state where fear never appears again. What matters is learning where we are moved. When fear does come, prayer becomes the path of that movement. Quietly remaining before God's word makes that movement possible. At first, it may seem as if nothing is changing, but the longer the heart remains before him, the more sensitive it becomes to his presence rather than to outward noise. A soul once ruled by people's eyes begins to breathe again under God's gaze. Even when anxious thoughts rush in, the heart is no longer dragged into them at once. It begins to remember the hidden place to which it must return first. This is real grace for the day of trouble. So Psalm 27 does not simply tell us to endure. It invites us to hide ourselves in God. It tells us not to cross the night by the strength of solitary endurance, but to bring the heart beneath His covering. There we learn a protection deeper than changed circumstances. There we receive the peace of His presence before the answer has fully come. That peace is not loud, but it is strong enough to help the soul stand again. The one hidden in God may remain in the same outward situation, yet stands within it, with an inward life that has been changed. As the heart remains under that protection, it slowly begins to learn something more. God does not hide us only to lessen our fear. He hides us so that He may raise us again into the place of worship. In Psalm 27, the psalmist says that his head will be lifted up above the enemies around him, and that in God's tabernacle He will offer sacrifices of joy, sing, and make melody to the Lord. This is a very important movement in the psalm. The end of being hidden in God is not merely to endure a little longer. It is to be opened again toward God with praise. His protection is not only defense, it is the beginning of restoration for a soul that had begun to collapse. When people pass through long and difficult seasons, the heart often begins to close. At first it closes to avoid further pain, but over time, it can also grow dull toward joy and slow toward gratitude. When the days become heavy and survival itself feels exhausting, the soul becomes smaller, words become fewer. Even the heart's response toward God can begin to dry up. Prayer may start to feel like duty. Praise may no longer reach deep within, and the place of worship may feel more like another task than a place of comfort. Outwardly, a person may still remain in the patterns of faith, yet inwardly, that soul may have been tired for a very long time. Psalm 27 shows such a soul what the result of God's protection truly is. He does not stop at simply helping us survive. He restores us until we are able to sing again. Praise here does not mean only the response that comes when emotions have improved. It is the response of one who knows from where God has lifted them. Even if every problem has not yet been fully resolved, when a person begins to see that God has raised them from a low place of fear and set them again before Himself, the soul slowly begins to recover its song. Praise is not the sound of denying reality. It is the sound of recognizing again that God is greater than reality, and that confession breathes new life into a heart that had grown dry. A soul once ruled by circumstances and human reactions begins instead to respond to who God is. That is part of the deep restoration that worship brings. In the flow of Psalm 27, this movement is very natural. From fear to protection, from protection to praise. God does not leave us curled inward forever. At first, He hides us, holds us, and keeps us. But then, He also lifts our face. This does not mean He simply restores wounded pride. It means He raises us again into a person who can look toward Him. The one who had once counted fears with head bowed down begins over time to lift the eyes and praise God. This is one of the clearest signs of restoration in the psalm. True healing in the soul is not only that anxiety becomes smaller, it is that the heart becomes alive again in its response to God. We need this kind of change in ordinary life as well. On some days, before problems are solved, what matters more is that the hardened heart begins to soften again. We need to let go of the effort to appear strong and learn gratitude again before God. There must be days when even a small grace moves the heart, when one short line of scripture changes the eyes, and when a quiet song enters deeply as comfort. This is not emotional weakness. It is a sign that the soul is alive. God does not force open a wounded heart all at once. He protects it first and then slowly opens it again. So praise is not a bright attitude that we manufacture. It is the living response that begins to bloom again within a soul that has been sheltered by God. As we meditate on this, we may begin to notice which parts of us have long been hardened. There may have been a season when caution felt more natural than gratitude, when resignation felt easier than expectancy, and when survival seemed more urgent than worship. But God leads even such a soul back toward praise. The broken heart may not sing loudly all at once, yet little by little, it begins to learn again how to respond to Him, and that response becomes a sign of restoration. The one hidden in God will not remain forever in silence. In time, that soul begins again to magnify Him. The psalmist still knows danger. He still lives among falsehood, pressure, and the threat of harm. And yet his heart begins to move in one clear direction. It does not first move toward calculation. It moves toward the character of God. This is where the heart of faith becomes clear. The strength that keeps the soul alive is not found in changing our emotions quickly, but in turning the heart again and again toward the unchanging God. When people are shaken, they long for immediate certainty. They want to know the answer now. They want the problem resolved now. They want the heart to feel lighter now. So even in prayer, it becomes easy to hold more tightly to the result than to God Himself. We imagine that once the problem is solved, peace will finally come. We think that if the answer arrives, then gratitude will become possible. We assume that if circumstances improve, faith will naturally become strong. But Psalm 27 quietly changes that order. Peace is not given only as a reward after everything has ended well. It can begin already in the place where the heart looks first toward God. The waiting season is not wasted. It becomes the place where the vision of the soul is being trained. Even while the answer seems delayed, God is silently rebuilding the center of a person within. This principle may sound simple, but it asks for a deep change. Anxiety makes visible things appear larger. Faith teaches the heart to look more truly at the God it cannot see. Anxiety wants constant checking. Faith learns to keep entrusting. Anxiety tries to seize the future. Faith remains before God today. For this reason, faith is not completed in a single decision. It grows through repeated turning. Again and again, when the heart begins to scatter, it is brought back to God. That is what the psalmist is living. It is not that fear never returns. It is that whenever fear rises, his heart is being trained to seek God more deeply instead. This principle can reshape ordinary life as well. When the day begins and the mind is already crowded with responsibilities, there is need for a brief stopping before God, rather than trying to organize everything at once. When someone's words remain in the heart and unsettle the whole day, there is need not only to repeat those words inwardly, but to dwell longer beneath God's gaze. When tomorrow's uncertainty tries to steal today's peace, there is need not to grasp the future first, but to remain in the word given for today. From the outside, this may seem like only a small difference, but the direction of that difference leads the soul to a completely different place. The one who keeps holding the problem grows more exhausted. The one who keeps holding God grows steadier, even while waiting. When we hold this principle, the meaning of prayer also begins to change. Prayer is not only the time when we ask to receive what we want. It is the time when the shaking heart is turned again toward God. Meditation on Scripture is not only the gathering of more information, it becomes the quiet place where we see what is growing larger within us. Are we making the problem larger, or are we seeing God more clearly? Which voice has the soul been holding more often? These things slowly come into the light. That is why the growth of faith often happens deeper than outward achievement. The heart becomes a little less hurried. In moments that once would have broken it quickly, it begins to lean a little more toward God. Even while answers delay, the inner life does not collapse completely. This is one of the real changes. God works in the long season of waiting. In the end, Psalm 27 shows a clear principle. What upholds the soul is not fast resolution, but right vision. The one who looks to God first has not yet received every answer, yet has already begun not to lose the way. Fear may still come, but it no longer becomes the ruler of the heart. Waiting may still be long, but it no longer flows only toward despair. The gaze fixed on God holds the center of the soul in place. When the day begins, and many responsibilities rush in at once, the heart may once have followed anxiety immediately, but now, instead of following that urgency at once, it begins to pause before God. When one person's words stay in the heart and keep piercing inwardly, the soul slowly learns not to repeat those words until it grows weaker, but to lay that burden quietly before God. Application often begins, not with large decisions, but with these small changes of direction. Psalm 27 shows this path of application very clearly. Whenever fear comes, the soul does not spend all its strength wrestling only with that fear. Instead, it turns more quickly toward God. The longer the heart clings to the problem, the weaker it becomes. The longer it remains before God, the more it slowly recovers its center. That is why repetition matters in real life. It is not enough to seek God only after being shaken badly. There must also be a small, faithful habit of remaining before His Word, before the heart begins to fall apart. To begin the day holding even one short verse, to remain in silence for a moment. When the mind becomes crowded, to place the whole day before God again, before sleep. These small practices change the direction of the soul. To human eyes, they may not look impressive, but for the inner life, they become very real training. Application is also connected to what we choose to lessen. An anxious heart usually wants more checking, more calculating, and more imagining. But the path of Psalm 27 moves another way. It slowly reduces the things that keep the soul restless and makes room for longer abiding in God. Instead of turning unresolved matters over and over in the mind, we learn to entrust to God what we cannot hold. Instead of continuing to guess at people's reactions, we spend more time meditating on how God sees us. Instead of trying to live tomorrow in advance, we learn to live this day within the grace already given. Application is not mainly a technique for doing more things. It is the decision of where the soul will remain longer. At first, this path may seem as though little is changing. The circumstances are still similar. The people are still the same. The reasons for worry have not completely disappeared, but the strength of application is found precisely in that slow change. A quick solution may lighten the heart for a moment, but repeated application begins to change the inner condition of the soul itself. A heart that once remained shaken for a very long time begins to return to God more quickly. Nights that once became heavier through endless imagination begin to find their center again through even one line of scripture. Everything does not become perfect, yet the speed of collapse changes and the direction of recovery becomes clearer. Looking first to God may not transform life all at once, but it changes the movement of the soul in a real way. This application is not only for unusual people or special seasons. It is often most necessary on the most ordinary days. To pause for breath and call on God's name in the middle of a busy schedule, to bring scripture to mind before feeding the thoughts that enlarge the problem, to return to God instead of falling immediately into discouragement when the day does not go as expected. This repetition brings the path of Psalm 27 into the reality of today's life. In the end, application is not merely understanding the word from afar. It is allowing the gaze of God to enter the rhythm of one's daily life. At first, it may feel as though the change is only slight. Moments that once would have shaken the heart for a long time no longer carry the whole soul all the way down. Worry may still begin, but it no longer keeps growing without interruption. Even in the middle of that movement, there begins to appear a small space in which the heart can pause and look again toward God. The circumstances may still be complicated. Unresolved matters may still remain. The responses of people may still be unpredictable. And yet, in the center of the heart, something different has already begun. The soul starts breathing in another way, at a place deeper than outward conditions. This change does not always come in dramatic or sudden form. More often, it grows quietly, as the hours spent before God are laid one upon another. The parts of the heart that once shook so easily begin little by little to grow firmer. The soul becomes less hurried. It does not fall into despair as quickly when it sees a problem. Even when waiting becomes long, it no longer lets go of itself as easily as before. This is not only because the person has become stronger in temperament. It is because the inward point of reference has slowly changed. Before, the situation created the center of interpretation. Now, the character of God begins to become that center. And when interpretation changes, the response of the heart changes also. This is one of the quiet, inward transformations that takes place through the Word. One of the deepest signs of this change appears when fear has not fully disappeared and yet no longer has the power to define the whole self. A person may still be weak. There may still be days of exhaustion. There may still be moments when an unexpected event causes trembling. But that weakness and that trembling no longer become the whole meaning of one's life. The longer a person remains in God, the less they interpret themselves, only through their emotions. If anxiety is present today, it does not mean God has moved away. If the soul feels tired now, it does not mean faith has vanished. Little by little, the heart learns not to judge itself by the waves of feeling, but to see itself again in God. This brings a very deep freedom to the soul. This inward change also appears in relationships. There may have been a time when one response from another person was enough to overturn the whole day, or when the feeling of not being recognized made the heart unbearably heavy. But now, the soul begins to remember the God who holds it at a place deeper than the reactions of others. That does not mean the words of people no longer affect the heart at all. It means those words no longer become the final authority over the inner life. Before a cold attitude, the soul does not collapse as quickly. In moments of misunderstanding or unfairness, it does not immediately fall into despair. Even during times of not being understood, it can still breathe before God. The outward relationships may remain complex, but the inward center becomes more deeply bound to Him. This change also appears in the way a person lives with time. What once felt like empty delay slowly becomes a season in which God is still working. So instead of becoming only more anxious as answers are delayed, the heart begins trying not to lose God within the waiting itself. Even when visible fruit has not yet appeared, the soul no longer sees its time before the Word as something wasted. Quiet and repeated prayer no longer feels like a meaningless habit, for the change has already begun. Even before the outward conclusion arrives, the heart is already leaning more toward God. Waiting is no longer empty time. It becomes time in which the soul learns Him more deeply. In this way, the inward life slowly grows softer again. A long-wearied soul often becomes hardened. Repeated wounds make expectation weak. But the one who has remained long before God begins to hope again. Not with reckless optimism, but with a quiet expectancy, resting on the truth that God is still good. The heart begins to give thanks again, even for small grace. It responds again to brief comfort. It understands the pain of others more deeply than before, because it knows what it means to be held by God in a place of weakness. It no longer judges the trembling of others too quickly. This is not merely a condition of feeling calmer. It is a change through which the soul begins to resemble God more deeply. So the deepest fruit Psalm 27 leaves within us is not simply one experience of overcoming fear. It is that through remaining before God, a person is slowly being formed into someone different. One problem may end, and another may come again. But the inward life, renewed in God, does not shake in the same old way. The same night may come. The same waiting may continue. The same kind of fear may still appear. And yet, the direction of the soul has changed. The gaze turned toward God is quietly reshaping the whole inner life. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. This final exhortation is not a beautiful sentence, added only after every tension has already ended. It is spoken in the place where answers may still be delayed, where outward reality may still remain unchanged, and where the heart may still be vulnerable to trembling. So this waiting is not vague passivity. It is remaining with God, even when He does not seem immediately visible. It is refusing to let go of Him, even when the result cannot yet be held in the hand. It is a patient endurance that rests its weight on the truth that God is still good. For human beings, waiting is one of the hardest forms of training. The longer a time lasts, in which we cannot move, cannot confirm, and cannot change what is before us, the more easily the heart grows weary. A person who once prayed with expectation may slowly begin to lean toward resignation when the delay becomes long. A hopeful heart may begin to shrink when it faces one postponement after another. So in a season of waiting, what matters most is not only the problem itself, but the direction the heart takes while waiting. Some people become more closed. Some become more deeply turned toward God. Psalm 27 meets us at that dividing place. It quietly tells us not to let waiting become a season of surrendering hope, but to receive it as a season of deeper trust in God. To be of good courage here does not mean forcing ourselves to look strong. It does not mean pretending there is no fear. It does not mean enduring like a person who no longer feels pain. It means something quieter and truer. It is the posture of a weak person who still refuses to collapse because of God. Courage is not first a brightness of emotion. It is a clarity of direction. It is knowing where to return, even when the heart shakes. It is knowing whom to wait for, even when the answer delays. It is not losing hope, even when tears remain. So the end of this psalm does not command us to act strong. It calls us to remain attached to God while waiting. And that cleaving of the heart is what gives it strength again. In our own lives, the faith that remains at the end is often revealed most clearly in this place. Not when everything is obvious, but when almost nothing feels certain. That is often when the true depth of faith appears, at the unopened door, before which we have already prayed, in the time after we have done our best, yet still do not know the outcome. On the days when the comfort we expected from people does not come, the soul is faced with a final choice. Will it become more hurried? Will it harden into cynicism? Or will it turn again toward waiting on God? Psalm 27 speaks softly there. Wait. Do not let your heart grow weak in the waiting. Do not let go of God. Waiting is not an empty stretch in which nothing is happening. Very often, God does His deepest work there. He shapes the inner person more than the outward setting. He settles the hurried heart. He teaches the soul to value God Himself more than the immediate result. So the greatest gift that comes at the end of waiting may not be only the answer we once desired. It may also be the heart that has learned to know God more deeply, the soul that has become humbled and softened, the life that now leans upon Him more fully than it once did. Psalm 27 brings us there. It begins in fear and ends in waiting. And by doing so, it shows that waiting is not a sign that your faith has failed, but can become its deepest completion. Even if every answer does not come today, that is all right. Even if the heart does not yet feel completely strong, that is all right. What matters is that even now, the heart chooses to remain in the direction of waiting on God. The ending of Psalm 27 holds the soul quietly, yet very surely. The one who waits on God is not abandoned. That person is being held, even in a night that is not fully ended. That soul is already being carried in God's hand toward the coming morning.